The most widely published book in human history reveals that we are created in the image of God. Throughout our human journey, each encounter is an opportunity to see the shared humanity in ourselves and others. Regardless of one's views on religion, each experience and each story weaves us together towards a common path. A path of transformation, a process of growth and understanding, a recognition that, at our core, we share a common destiny. What does the search for truth really mean in our lives? How can we find a sense of unity in a world so diverse and divided? As we reflect on these questions, we start to uncover a fundamental connection that binds us all beyond our differences. Welcome to Created in the Image of God, Building Vibrant Communities, with our host, Wade Franson. Tonight's episode is Becoming the Best Version of You.
Good evening, everyone. I hope the tech works today. I sometimes reboot my system before I go live. Didn't do that tonight, and I'm noticing a couple of little laggy things going on. Hopefully everything will be okay. But in the process of those little laggy things, I was actually reflecting on some of the words in that intro. And I don't always do this, but the tagline of building vibrant communities and talking about regardless of one's religious views, there's a common thread that connects us all. These are some of the things that I was reflecting on as I was discussing with today's guest in the studio right before the show, right up to literally, okay, we got to go live in 3 seconds, and having to cut off the conversation because we come from different places. And of course, all of the guests I have, there's a wide diversity of guests on this show. And I hope that's part of the appeal and part of the draw. But my point is, in those opening lines, reflecting on the diversity and all of us on a common path and all of us on a common journey. We're gonna get into that a little bit tonight as we talk about our guest, Suizan Schacherer's journey. She has a unique journey, one in which she struggled with her image of herself most of her life. And we joked about how that came about. If you saw the sneak peek, her father's little joke about her body, that it was a good thing that she had a weight issue because that kept the guys away when she was a teenager. But her journey is unique and different. And we're going to get into that right now as we introduce her into the studio. Welcome, Suizan.
Hey, Wade. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, and it is wonderful. I mean, we connected, I think, a few weeks ago, and I hadn't talked to you since. And I'm just remembering those discussions we had in preparing for this show. So I want to just quickly do something a little different. Normally we jump right into your story. What I want to do is talk a little bit about this image idea, right? And we were just talking about whatever idea or image we've had in our head about what God is like, we don't really know. And sometimes the most strongly held beliefs, and they're reinforced by certain scriptures in the Bible where we're told to hold fast to the truth, hold fast to that which has been delivered to you. Don't let any man steal your crown, and be aware that the devil, like a roaring lion, is going about seeking whom he may devour. And these are powerful messages that teach us to, to diligently strive to, and I'm getting the quote wrong here, but for the faith once delivered, right? So there's this idea of holding tightly on to what we know and believe and understand. But we also have to always be open, because Jesus also talked about new wine in old wineskins. And if you put new wine in old wineskins, the old wineskins burst, right? Because they're dry and they don't expand. A new wineskin, when the wine matures, it will allow it to expand. But if you put new wine in an old wineskin, that wineskin will burst. And both the wineskin and the wine are ruined, right? So strongly held beliefs are strong beliefs loosely held, is what we were talking about, and not being fixated on our own idea of what God is, or what Jesus was, or what he looked like based on having seen a crucifix or a picture of him on somebody's wall or a movie. So You know, I'm going to now crash land this discussion plane around image, right? And your story and your own body image that's a part of your journey, right? And why you're here on the show.
Yes, for sure. I joke with everybody just saying, from day one, I come screaming into the hospital at 9:09. And again, my poor mom. And it just never got better. Like it was its own journey. Of course, life in itself is a journey. And eh, in general, we always say, like, let's not look focused on just the destination. Like, you really have to take the journey in. And that was probably a journey that at the time I wouldn't have wanted, but I know that it really framed who I am today, being heavy over half not even just heavy, but overweight or obese, morbidly obese over half of my life.
Well, and this is something that's not uncommon in today's America, right? There are many things outside our control in the
Yeah,
world we're born into that are leading to this and causing this today. This is not something that was happening hundreds of years ago. It's something that's not happening in certain other countries of
exactly.
the world. It's a problem in the West. It's particularly a problem in America.
Totally. I mean, if you look at just where we are today, and it's cheaper to run through a McDonald's and get a meal for 5 versus going to Whole Foods. And, I'm not talking badly about Whole Foods. I'm just saying in general, that's how it is. It is easier to eat and more affordable to eat bad than good.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about those early experiences, the world you grew up in. We always like to talk about the creation story of the guest. What was the world you were born into? What were your parents like? And what was early childhood? When did you begin to realize that maybe you were heavier than others and that somehow mattered?
I I can't ever tell you that I don't remember being heavy. I remember it as soon as probably I was cognizant enough because all my friends were thin and you compare yourself to your friends. So, like, going to the mall, they're shopping for clothes and I'm shopping for shoes, right? And, I'm not about to say, "Hey, let's run over to Lane Bryant," right? You probably don't even know what that
I
is.
think I do, but I've never
But
been there.
yes, it's just for
Right.
females. But, growing up, I was so super blessed to be in an incredible, loving home that, I grew up with Tom, my dad, and, my mom did the best she could, and they divorced very early on. And, applause for my family that I don't have any trauma from it. I don't remember when my mom left, and I should, but I don't. But I was pretty young, and, so my dad picked up the ball and ran for it, like, just he is my hero, and so I'm very lucky to know what it is to grow up in a very stable and secure home because of my dad,
So
and so and he was in
was your
media.
mom around? You just didn't live with her, or was she like in a different state, or did you not see her?
I didn't see her. She was in and out. She was a loving mother, but, back then nobody talked about mental illness, and I think that there was not I think, I know, she had she struggled with mental illness, and again, I didn't learn that until I was married. So, she was in and out. My dad was, again, the best dad in that, like, say, on our birthdays, he would find out where she was, and he would call her and say, "Do you wanna talk to your girls?" or whatever. He never said a bad word about my mother. He did all the things a single parent is supposed to do for your children.
Did
So,
either of
it
your
was
parents struggle with weight issues?
yes, for sure. My dad was heavier. I guarantee my mother struggled with it, did a lot of yo-yoing. At one point she would model, at the next point, I would see her maybe and she was heavier. And that could have been a lifestyle situation to where, I don't know enough about my mother. In fact, God rest her, she's not here anymore. She died like January 3rd. 2000. And so I don't even really understand what her really anything like menopause or all those things that females would like to know about their mom. I don't know. And they're things I've never asked because I don't even know who to ask. So, yeah, but yeah, she did struggle.
And I'm sorry, and did you say your dad also had some challenges there, or?
Yeah, he was a bigger guy, the jolly guy that everybody
Mm.
loved, and really that's kinda how I learned to be jolly and everybody's friend, and, everybody was my friend, I had no boyfriend sort of thing, and, that again, that framed who I am today. I really lean into comedy and self-deprecation and, I think it makes people feel uncomfortable, and it's like, it's something that I have to relearn, but,
Well,
I've
let's sorry, you froze up for a moment on my end. It might well be on my end, but let's spend a moment with that. Because yeah, we've all heard that and we've seen it. I actually had a roommate for a while who was very heavy. Um, good friend of mine. He was always heavy. And I've always been a skinny little guy, and I'm short as well. And he was taller. Wasn't super tall, but extremely heavy. And it got worse. And when I went through my own divorce, he was a good friend, and I got another house and had him move in with me. Wonderful guy, but we never really talked about that. And I'm very different now than I was then. I'm more open and interested and curious in other people. I had my own, I guess, baggage or reasons why I didn't engage with other people. I mean, pretty much, I would say I went to 12 different schools growing up, and everybody knew me, and I didn't know anybody. I couldn't even remember their names, and it was always awkward. And I got into the habit of not learning any details about them because then they would expect me to remember those, and I wouldn't. And it just made for awkward conversations, right?
Yeah.
Whereas today, I'm so different in my approach to that. I'm curious what it was like, sort of growing up and adopting those behaviors, and how you view that now. You mentioned, maybe changing, but some of that to me seems like very good, that you're friendly and jovial and positive in that sense. But then I didn't think about the self-deprecating part.
So, the funny thing is while I am positive and jovial on the outside, I don't wanna say like I'm the sad clown on the inside, like, "Wah," but,
Mhm.
if I was going out with my friends and they're like, "Do I wear the hot black dress or do I wear turtleneck?" I'm like, "Oh, for sure the turtleneck." I was the fat friend. I mean,
Yeah,
and so I guarantee, like, I was like, "Wear the turtleneck," because, it's just it's horrible being the fat friend. And so, even though I had, like, all these friends, there's still that there's that push-pull of how you feel about yourself all the time. Like, everything you do, you've gotta think about, is am I who's looking at me? I joke with my family and would say, way back when I would have what was called a swim shirt. Okay. So every time we'd go to the beach or to the pool, whatever it was, I had a swim shirt because that swim shirt was my cloak. If I wore that, nobody really saw what I looked like in a swimsuit. The swim shirt didn't do anything, but in my head it did. And, it's like I don't know if I'm verbalizing this correctly, but it's like in my head, I was like, if I wear my swim shirt, no one will see what's underneath me, what I look like in a swimsuit. Same with what I wore to work every single day, a black suit. Changed out my shirt, but I wore a black suit every day. So I was almost always covered up because if I was covered up, nobody saw really what I looked like. And
right.
did I really believe that? I doubt it.
Well, I have an idea of what we're going to go into next. It's going to be a deep dive into this topic, probably something you've not considered before. And this just came to me, actually. But before we do so, I'm going to go to the first commercial break, which will be, I think it's an introduction to a seminar you're doing, and give people a little bit more insight into who you are. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this brief little video about Suizan Schacherer.
Hi, I'm Susan, and I'd love for you to join me for my webinar, The Power of Change, live after bariatric surgery, this September 22nd, online at 6 p.m. For years, I treated my body like it didn't matter, ate horrible food, all the things. But Scripture reminds us that our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit. God designed us, and it's our responsibility to honor that gift. My journey through bariatric surgery was more than just about losing weight, but I didn't realize it. It was about reclaiming the health and strength God always intended for me. It's never too late to step into the life God created for you. Whether you've struggled for decades, again like me, or just begun, His grace makes transformation possible. In this webinar, I'll share my story of physical change, spiritual renewal, and how you too can respect and restore the body God gave you. Join me. I promise it will encourage your heart and strengthen your faith. And we'll have a real, raw Q&A afterward. I look forward to the journey with you.
Well, thank you, Susan. And I've just posted a link in the chat to your event, which was rescheduled for October 6th, 6 to 8 p.m. And anything else you want to say about that seminar before we jump into this next segment?
I just really kind of hope that people will come in not just with the idea that they have to get bariatric. I can tell you during my whole journey with bariatric, I stalled at, 200 pounds. And when I went to my doctor and he said, "Well, are you done?" I'm like, "Well, I can't remember the last time I've been at 200, so I'm happy with that." And so the whole idea is I really didn't change anything until I started doing one tiny thing out of not like I told you, I started walking in flip-flops and I was just going out to listen to music. And the whole idea was that I was just going out there to do 1 mile to clear my head with some music, and it became a habit. And that changed everything because it was this very, very small, consistent change that became just a giant impact on the rest of my life. So I really want everybody to understand that, you know, I want them to ask any questions that they want to ask, but also that I'm going to be really raw and real in answering those questions and bringing questions or answers to things that they didn't know they didn't know. So I really want this to be about them mostly. I want them to understand my journey in that it may be relevant to them, not, "Ooh, look at me." I really want it to be about them.
Awesome. And before we get in, I want to get into some of that. I want to ground this in a couple of scriptural principles. We were talking in the minutes before the show about what it is to be a real Christian, and Jesus' statement that in John 13:35, "By this shall all men know you, that you have love one for another." And when he says all men will know you, that you are my disciples, I missed that part. "By this will all men know that you are my disciples, that you have love one for another." So if we go by the term Christian, if we consider ourselves Christian, that's what all men should see. Fellow Christians, atheists, Hindus, Muslims should see a person full of love. And if we only love those that are like us, today that's not good enough in today's multicultural world, right? We've matured as a species that just loving people like us isn't love. It's seen to be hypocritical and inadequate. So we got to move beyond just loving our fellow Christians or loving other women or other men or white people or black people we have to be seen by all men, and by that is also meant women, that we're full of love, right? So let's talk about this thing of weight in that context. And there's this other verse from the Old Testament in Proverbs that says, if a man would have friends, he must show himself friendly. To have friends, you must show yourself to be a friendly person. It has to be reciprocal in two ways. So you adopted various styles of relating to other people, and you were a friend to lots and lots of people. You had that part kind of dialed, but inside it wasn't really reciprocal. And I got to ask, are some of those friends from the past still your friends now that you're no longer the fat friend? And how did that transition work?
I'm just laughing because I love when people say that, because it usually makes people uncomfortable, and I always have to apologize for saying I'm the fat girl. I do. I still have so many friends from junior high, high school. I keep in touch with all of them, as we all get older, we kind of go off in our own, in our own trajectory, mostly because we have families and there's only so much time. And, I moved away. But yes, I'm still very close to even my best friend that I guarantee I told her to wear a turtleneck.
Well, some of those friends were real friends, even though you felt like you couldn't maybe be the real you, or whatever those feelings of inadequacy were inside, they were more
Totally.
you than your friend in this case.
But here's the crazy thing. I was on a bariatric podcast last week, and I had one of the biggest light bulb moments, and I didn't get to tell her yet because I just recently had it. But my friends were better friends to me than I was to myself. And part of that was I made sure that I would say I was the fat girl before anybody else did, because because in my head, I'm taking the wind out of anybody's sail. If I call myself that first, they can't call me that, right? And then all of a sudden, that whole idea of I would never be friends with somebody that spoke to me the way I used to speak to myself.
Well, that's a great segue for where I really want to go with all this. And this is a partial epiphany, but it's coming even clearer in this concept. We talked about how the Bible, well, I won't go there. So in the book of Genesis, you've got the first creation story, because there are two of them, and I'll get to that in a second. The first creation story is God's view of things. God said, "Let there be light." The Spirit of God hovered above the waters, the primordial waters, before he created heaven and earth. It talks about waters. I won't get into the theology or the Hebrew, but the Spirit of God moved about the water, hovered, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And then God separated the earth from the water, and then God created the greater and lesser lights in heaven. And there's a lot going on there. The reason they're called greater and lesser lights, and I have this behind me, it always reminds me, the moon and the sun. The reason they're not called moon and sun is those were the names of pagan deities. And the author of the book of Genesis wanted to make sure that nobody thought God created other gods. So the book of Genesis actually demythologizes. People say, oh, the Bible's a book of myths, right? Genesis is no. The author very carefully demythologized and gave us a really clear, pure insight. But that's not even the point. The point is, every day of that creation story, at the end of the day, God looked upon it and he said it was good. And when it comes to the sixth day, and now this is the second creation story in Genesis 2. It's an earth-centric view. It's not from the heavens and God said and there was. He's creating from fiat, out of nothing, ex nihilo. Now you see God completely in a different way, bending down and putting his hands in the dirt and shaping us with his own hands out of the dust of the ground. He's not saying, let there be a man and a woman. And there was. He's personally shaping and molding it. And then with his own mouth, he breathes life into us. He breathed the breath of life into Adam. And then he takes a rib from Adam and crafts Eve, right? This is a master craftsman lovingly creating something. And then he did something different. He said it was very good. Up until that, everything was good. This was very good. So he created this naked man and this naked woman. And he said, it's very good. You see where this is going. The next thing you know, fast forward, Adam and Eve are cowering in fear, hiding from God because of this little thing about a serpent and a fruit, maybe an apple. It wasn't an apple, but let's call it an apple, a serpent and an apple. And God says, what's going on? And I think it's Eve that says, we hid from you because we are naked. And God says, who told you you were naked? Now you can interpret those simple words multiple ways. Like, it's like, who let the cat out of the bag? Where'd you find out about this secret? But I don't think that's what was going on. Who put the idea in your head that there was something shameful about how I made you?
Right. Who told them that they had to wear
Because
clothes if that's all they knew?
God created us naked. And when, you know, I have two kids, and when
Right.
I was changing my kids on the changing cable when they were, 3 or 6 months old, I mean, they're the cutest little things, right? They're these beautiful little,
Yes. Who
creatures. And yeah, sure, they stink and you're having to get a baby wipe, you know,
who doesn't love the little
but
baby
it's
tushy? Exactly.
exactly smooth as a baby's butt, right? It's so
Right.
beautiful.
Yes, and again, who how would they know anything different if you're born, like, say in someone's house, if you bring your child home and all you ever do is walk around naked, you do, the
Well, and
kids
there,
do,
I
before
I've
they
been
ever
in
walk
Sweden,
outside, that's
I've
all
been
they
in
know.
Sweden. I grew up in Sweden partially, and I saw this picture of they had like these naked suits with all the organs, but it's a suit. So they no, I'm not suggesting that. I'm not suggesting nudist colonies. That's not what I'm suggesting. You know what I mean? It's not where I'm going with this at all, that we should have nudist colonies. But I'm
We got way off track.
I think I'm quite
That's usually
happy
what
with
I
the idea
do.
of clothes personally. But the
100%.
point is,
And probably be more than anybody
the
else.
point is the shame, right? The shame. And
Right. Ooh, now I know where you're going.
so yeah, so having set that groundwork, I think I wanted to do that so that some of our audience wouldn't be, oh, please, I don't want to talk about weight. I don't want to talk about. No, this is deep. And your experience is deep. And the fact that you're willing to share, that you're willing to, strip naked in front of us figuratively about your weight issue, right? It's I
Yes.
I thank you for that. It's brave, it's courageous, and done in the right way, it can be incredibly motivating and powerful. So I wanted to set the stage about really how important this topic really is, about your self-image and what you went through and the learned behaviors and the adaptations and your journey inside, your psychological journey around all of this. So having set that stage, tell us more about that moment of deciding to go walk and the change, and what was going on inside with all of this change and transformation. Because after all, the title is becoming the best version of you.
So it's crazy. I'm going to back up just a little bit. Remember when I was talking about, wearing the black the black suit to work every day. And I think people in general are very, very uncomfortable with things that, one, they don't understand, or two, stigma, and three, what they believe, they know that we feel shame, right? And so I can remember the million times I'm saying, I'm going on a diet. And you would have a handful of people that would say, "What? Why are you going on a diet?" Right at that moment, I was like, I will never believe another word coming out of your mouth, because the pandering that came with that. And again, I don't think that they're bad for doing that. Not at all. They're they're coming from here versus, oh, wouldn't it be easier if I said, "What are you doing? How can I help?" Versus going, "Oh, why are you going on a diet?" Like acting like I'm thin. It's like, "Oh, I'm skinny girl today." No, I knew I was fat, I was obese, I was overweight, and yes, I'm going on my 19th diet. And they would say things like, "I never see you eat." No, you don't see me eat. I can pound a Snickers in 2 bites if I think that I can get that in before anybody sees me eating it, because again, if you see, these are all my things, but the shame in eating anything, whether it's a piece of corn or a Snickers, I don't want anybody to see me eating because they think I'm lazy. I think they their perception of me is I'm lazy, I'm fat, I'm gross, I'm this, I'm that. And honestly, they're not even looking at me. Like being out at the beach, they're worried about themselves. But
Right.
there's just so much noise when you are that unhealthy, and it becomes inward, and you become, like, again, your worst critic. And so in my new journey, where some people might say, "Don't tell anybody I'm getting bariatric surgery," like it's gonna be a surprise that when you lose weight. But I was the poster child. Like, my doctor loves me to this day because even today, I don't have the lap band anymore, but I will not drink with my meals because that's something that got me here and kept me here, is because I treated that lap band as a tool it was intended to do, which is basically slow me down because I could put some food away. Don't get me wrong, I still can, but I'm just more cognizant today, and it's because I did change a lot of the mental part of it, in that I know my stomach is this big, but way back when it was much smaller because I had a lap band, but it's this big, and that's how I even, like, treat my children. Like, you never had to finish your plate. Um, Stuff like that. Like, there were all these different things, and you want to be the best image of yourself for your children. And so for me, when I went on that first walk, it had nothing to do with anything other than I had been at home all day with my children, or actually, I'm sorry, my older daughter, and made dinner. It was on the table. And I was like, I just think I'm going to run out just clear my head, listen to some music, strap on, my giant whatever was on my arm, and went out in flip flops. I literally just did a mile around the block with my music. And the next night I was like, you know what? That really did do something for me. So it was completely unintentional because that became a habit. And that habit became, maybe I should wear sneakers because now I'm doing 2 miles and I'm getting blisters. And then that became like, it's kind of chilly. Maybe I should get some track pants. And then that became, what would happen if I joined a gym? And then that became, what would happen if I had a personal trainer? Completely changed everything I ever knew about weight loss. I was weight training when, growing up, they're like, "Oh my God, you're not going to weight train, are you? That's going to, you'll add that to your weight." Like, I was like, "Oh, I don't want that." And so all these little things that I did, by a year later, when I went to go back to talk to my doctor, and he said, "I thought you weren't going to lose any more weight." And I'm like, I wasn't, like, kind of curious, like, what did I lose? He was like, you lost 60 pounds. 60, right? And talk about staying the course, because when you see yourself every day, or your husband or your children, you see each other every day, you don't see the change. You go on vacation, you come home, and you see your children like, "Oh my God, you grew," because there was a time lapse in there. And like everybody you ever met when you were growing up, they're like, "Last time I saw you, you were this tall," right? Same thing with weight loss. That's why you have to stay the course. You go in saying, "I'm going to commit to this, and I'm going to make this work. And these are going to be little changes." You don't have to go on Atkins and walking and weight training and clearing out the entire pantry. You have to do something that's sustainable and stick with it, because those little changes, again, they just create big impact. Now, it's
So
totally
it
my
sounds like,
story.
as you were telling this, I was thinking baby steps. Is that does that concept play into it at all?
100%. And again, it's gotta be sustainable. Think about compounding interest, like when you have, your 401 or whatever, the earlier you get in, the bigger the impact, because and it could be smaller because you've got that compounding interest. So say the first thing you do is you start going on a walk 1 mile, and then that turns into, "What would happen if I ran to that mailbox?" And you think, "Oh, I got a stitch." But the next night you're like, "Well, I did it last night, I'm gonna do it again." And, like, all of a sudden now you've added a tiny bit of running, and then you're doing 2 miles, and then you're joining the gym. But these are small, sustainable, good habits, and that's all it is. It's just creating good habits, you know?
Well,
And
and
believe me, I've created bad habits for myself like I did over quarantine. I was drinking so much wine over quarantine. All of a sudden, I was like, I gained like 40 pounds. I was like, "What happened?" That wasn't fun to lose, but I did. The
well,
same way,
I'll
slowly.
tell a little bit of my own story. I was diagnosed at 28 with a chronic crippling disease. I'd had a number of health problems prior to this, and they told me there was no cure. And I was put on temporary disability, and I was offered permanent disability. While I was on temporary disability, and by the way, it's completely remission. I'll tell that full story another time, but I want to get to that moment, that change. With me, it was while I was on temporary disability, I was staying at this facility by my employer, which was a global church denomination, and I was at their headquarters on this, temporary disability, and they had a swimming pool because there was a college associated with it, and I would go swim in the pool in the mornings, and I swam in college. I was always somewhat athletic, especially in water sports. And the way that I was kind of tracking my progress is trying to improve the time it took me to swim a mile, right? Or a lap, but a mile was the goal. And because I would swim a mile, that was my workout. And it would be like 38 minutes, 36 minutes, 34 minutes. And I would push myself. But then I would have like a relapse, and the situation I had was this chronic inflammation in the spinal column and in the hips, and I'd wake up in agony at night, and I couldn't sleep, and my whole training and my improvement was out the window, and it was like one step forward, two steps back. And the change was, and I thought about this when you said, "I'll just go out in my flip flops for a walk." The change was, I threw out the clock. And because, it is about self-improvement, and there's kind of this desire to improve, but instead of focusing on the time, I said, let me just practice my stroke. Let me pretend I'm dancing. Let me enjoy the way it feels when I glide through the water with less resistance. Let me just enjoy this versus, and that in itself will help me improve. So I wanted to improve, but the improvement is, let me just practice my stroke and not care about how fast, and practice it with the idea of art or music or dance, right? And that was the change. That was the beginning of a psychological change in the way that I thought and the way that I approached life.
And, and it's crazy because you think about what you went through, and I'm sure when you got the diagnoses, like, you were like,
Well, they
"I
told me I had
didn't
to be
do
in a
this with my."
wheelchair at age 40.
Right, that's terrifying. So immediately you're like, "What can I do? What can I do?" And because
Well, the
at the
funny thing
end.
is, for me, just for the record, it wasn't
Yeah,
terrifying at all because of my faith. And I believed that God would heal me. But then he didn't, right? And the next thing you know, I'm on disability. Are you kidding me? I should be doing the work of God, right? I was out ministering and doing all this evangelistic stuff in Europe, and now I'm being sent back to the US on disability. What? It wasn't terrifying, but it was confusing. Like, God, why aren't you healing me? And in the end, he did heal me by teaching me to become a different person.
Yes. And that makes total sense because it's kind of like he this thing happened to you and then you pivoted and adapted yourself to it in whatever way that was because you have a decision to make.
Yep.
Am I going to live with it?
Balls in your
Am I
court.
going to get busy? Yeah, exactly. Am I going to get busy living or am I going to just sit in here and in my pity party, so to speak? I mean, not taking anything away from what you went through, but
No, no. So,
you're
but
right.
this isn't about me. So I want to know more about that moment, about that change, about the walk and how one change led to other changes. And what was that really like for you?
Well, like I told you, and again, I'm sure people are wondering, like, what do you mean you didn't know you lost 60 pounds? Well, I was at home taking care of children. So it's not as if I wasn't looking at the hot black dress because I had body dysmorphia. I lived over half of my life heavy. I still look at myself when I'm driving and go, God, my thighs are huge. Like, it's just something your head does not catch up. And so, like I said, when I went to the doctor and he was like, I thought you were going to lose any more weight. And I'm like, I wasn't. Like, what are you talking about? And I just didn't live by my scale, even though I should have, because there's your accountability. Not that you should live and die by it, but it does, you should be in a range and know the range you want to be in and that sort of thing. But I didn't. And so to tell you that there was any
Let me
one
let me
thing
let me
that,
pause you there because what I'm hearing and what I think I'm hearing is that your doctor might have been concerned about anorexia now because where does it
oh,
stop if you've got body dysmorphia, right? And
right.
you view yourself as fat and you're a skeleton, you're looking in the mirror saying I need to lose more weight.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, I wasn't a skeleton. And
No,
again,
but some
I'm
people,
only
so I mean,
laughing.
anorexia is its own thing, right? So yeah,
100%. And, and I can remember one time I went up to the office to go get something and the receptionist said, you know, I was worried about you such and such time, because you were looking sick. And all I could think about, like anybody else would be mortified by that. How horrible am I that I was like, oh, because again, my entire life, no one's ever come up to me and go, you need to eat, right? My entire life is, do you need to eat that? Should you be eating that? Oh, you have such a pretty face. If you would just lose the weight, like all of the things. So to hear that anybody ever thought that I looked sick, and actually at the time I actually had, not sick, but I had, like a 6 hemoglobin when you should have at least a 13. I had no idea. And she was like, aren't you tired? I'm like, who's not tired? Like, aren't we all tired? And so I was sick and I was losing a lot of weight, but it wasn't because I was anorexic or had bulimia or anything like that. It was just simply I was chewing on ice and that, believe it or not, that was more palatable to me than food because I needed to choose something because I was looking for that. I can't think of what they call it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think so. Yeah.
It's and so I had that, and so I was always chewing ice, and anyway, I'm taking myself off track, but anyway, so I don't think that there was any one moment where I was like, "Thing hit," and tools before that. I've been on so many different diets, so I've had all these tools. It's just none of them clicked for me. And then the minute I got that lap band, by the way, that's laparoscopic. Um, I had that lap band and I used that tool for me because you can cheat it all day long, like any diet, you can cheat. And from there, like I just kept losing the weight. And then I go to the doctor and he says what he says. Well, at that point, I'm like, I'm never going back to what I was. And maybe that was the moment that I maintained it because how many hundreds of pounds have I lost and gained? I couldn't even tell you because I would be like, say, 2 months into a diet, and I'm like, "God, I sure would like to have a cheat day," and that cheat day would turn into a cheat weekend or a week or whatever, and then before you know it, I'm off, gained it, and then more. I've gained even more than that, and so here I sit, like I I was not going to gain that weight back. And so because I did love the whole Weight Watcher style, I adopted that like Monday through Friday. I would be like, I'm gonna restrict what I eat. I'm going to do the point system at home by myself. And then on the weekend, I can eat whatever I want because at this point I'm maintaining. And it worked for me. And so and again, it's all up here. So I love to bake for my family, so I might have, like, a platter of cookies that I have, and I'm like, "Come Saturday, I am going to brutalize that plate of cookies." Then I get to Saturday, and I eat one, and I'm like, "Ooh, that was really good." But I think that did it for me because I worked so hard during the week.
Yeah.
So, I'm just a plate of spaghetti. I am a mess, but it was so imperfect, and it worked for me, and that's why everybody has to figure out what works for them, but it's gotta be what you'll do, and it's gotta be sustainable. So, I mean, I don't wanna put anything down at all. I think if you have a lot of weight to lose, would you look at, like, an Ozempic or something? Perhaps, but where's the discipline behind losing the weight, right? What does that teach you? It teaches you not to eat. You've gotta learn to eat because we can't not eat. So there's got to be discipline behind anything that you do. Do it and do it well. Start small, baby steps, like you said.
Well, I'm going to put the link back into your event. And we're going to go to another commercial break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about your spiritual journey and how that fits in. Because that was after you lost the weight, you also gained faith, right? So let's look forward to that. We'll be right back.
In a world where faith takes root and blossoms, comes a journey of growth like no other. Blooming for Christ, a captivating exploration of spirituality and the remarkable parallels between a plant's journey and our own. Just as a seed must germinate to become a thriving plant, our spiritual timeline begins with a single decision. Through the insightful words of Reverend Barbara Brian, this book takes you on a transformative quest. A journey of growth that echoes the stages of a plant's life. From the tender shoot of a young believer bravely facing the world, to the full bloom of faith experiences shared and cherished. As seeds of faith are sown, new believers are nurtured, and the cycle continues just as God intended. But the journey doesn't end there. As the plant matures, so does the believer, becoming God's chosen harvester in gardens of divine purpose. Reverend Brian's guidance, rooted in scripture and wisdom, gently leads you through the seasons of your spiritual life. Join us on this journey of discovery and renewal, a journey that unveils the beauty of your faith and the transformative power of God's love. Blooming for Christ. Embrace your season of growth and let your faith bloom. Available now.
Welcome back to Becoming the Best Version of You with Suizan Schacherer. So we were talking about all those little choices, the baby steps, and your own personal journey, the inner psychology. Now let's talk about faith a little bit. At what point did that become more important to you, and did losing the weight help with that?
No, I don't think I ever put the two together until recently. I know that I was always searching because one of my favorite stories, but she was going away on a weekend retreat. She invited me and I was like, "Oh gosh, yes. I love God. I believe in God." And so we head out and it's like I was with probably 20 of you, Wade, and here's me. And I was thinking, "Uh-oh, what have I gotten myself into? I hope I don't have to share because I don't have anything to share." And so I remember they separated me from my neighbor, and so I'm down at one end and she's at the other, and everyone's going around the room and everybody's sharing and they're talking about how God is talking to them, and God's saying this to me and God's saying that to me, and I was like, huh, like, and I kept my mouth shut for a little bit, and in true form, it just came out. I was like, "You know what? I'm paying for this too. I've got questions." And finally I said, "Um, God's not talking to me at all. Like, what's wrong with me? Like, why am I not being talked to?" And I could feel my neighbor going, like, "What is she doing?" And I remember going through that whole weekend. Like, it ended up being a great weekend. I'm sure I got some pearls from it or whatever. But I remember coming home and telling my dad, I'm like, "Dad, like, what is wrong with me? God's not talking to me. God's talking to everybody else but me." I was just with like 20 people and they all were talking about God talking to them. And he said, I'm sure this was for me, but he was like, "They're just showing off." And I went, "Oh, okay. Oh, thank God. Okay. Next." And then I get into this glorious Bible study, these amazing women in this Bible study. And again, it's like being with a bunch of Wades. They're all so incredibly versed. They've grown up in this world of God and Bible and verses, and they know all the stories. And I remember telling them this story because I think it's funny. And I don't know who said, but one of them said to me, you know, or maybe we were talking about scripture and they talked about how God talks to you in a familiar voice. Can be your own, right? It's your gut. It's how you talk to yourself. Like, you're running plays in your head or whatever. I had no idea. And it's funny because you are supposed to be quiet with God so you can hear God. Again, all these things are new and they're just hitting me rapid fire. And I would long before we ever talked about this part in Bible study, I would tell them, "I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I've got to do whatever." And all of my best ideas came when I was alone on my walk in the shower. Yeah, I know. Don't try to
No,
picture that.
I was
TMI.
thinking shower, shower. With me, it's always in the shower.
No one's with you. It's quiet, right?
Right.
Also, no one's with me on my walks. No one. I'm out
And
there by
you're naked
myself.
before God. I don't know why that keeps coming up tonight, but there it is again.
Yeah, there it is. And so I was having what I thought were all these running monologues with me from my children to my job to relationships, whatever it was. I was having all these dialogues, and my best ideas came when I was by myself because God was telling me. And I had no idea that I was talking to God in those moments. And it was like that light bulb moment and and then I go so far as I'm in the car with my husband, and my youngest daughter, Dutch, and I was telling them, I said, "Dutch, I have to apologize to you about something." She's like, "What?" And I said, "Well, I tend to be self-deprecating for my children too." And, there's this joke that I would tell regarding, them in school or whatever. And I said, that I feel like that's kind of prophesizing who you are, and that's not you. And I shouldn't say those things, and it's not right. And they were both kind of like, I'm sure like they're like, what's mom going through? Is she having a hot flash? And I said, I want you to understand that came to me while I was on a walk. God told me I need to stop saying those things to you, to myself, to everybody, because even though I'm joking, it does sting a little bit.
Well, and there's that famous saying, right? If you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Right?
So if
I
we're
mean,
always self-deprecating, we're diminishing our potential and our capacity. At the same time, done well, it does smooth over interpersonal relationships to not always lead with how great you are and your ego and all your accomplishments. You know what I mean?
yeah, that's what I think. I mean, it's no one likes a braggadocious person, but I feel like, do I do I possibly go too far? Maybe, but at the same time, like, I don't do it because I think it doesn't hurt me anymore. I really do try to lead with humor because while I do a million things incorrectly, Wade, one thing that I do well, and it's because it comes from here and it's also my business, relationships. Like I love to hear about people and their journey and what have you done. And, I love to hear stories. And, I just relationships have always been important to me. And And you're right. I think that, maybe leading with that kind of gives them an idea of who they're talking to right away. Like, okay, I can let down this wall because she kind of gave up something pretty personal right away, talking that she was like 270 pounds at her heaviest. Like, that's not stuff that people really want to talk about. But I think you've got to get honest if that's the relationship you want.
Amen. So, lots and lots of thoughts that I want to talk about, but I'm going to give that gift now to some of the audience members. We're going to jump into a few of the comments here. And there are a lot of them, so I don't know if you can see them, but if there's something that you want to talk about, we can jump on that. But there were a couple here. Let me find that I wanted to ask about. Let's go back to the food issue here and just this bow time. Sorry if I've mispronounced it. I'd like to know how your relationship with food changed in the years after surgery. And I think you shared some of that, but maybe another comment on that.
So very, very interesting. My sister also had the lap band literally a week before me. She and I did it
Well, can you
very, very
explain a
different.
little bit more? Because you mentioned laparoscopic, but I don't really know what that is actually either. I mean, I've heard the term, but I don't know what that is.
Okay, so gastric is where they totally change the landscape of your stomach. A laparoscopic surgery is basically like if this is your stomach, it's a band that goes around like this part. And that band then has this tube that goes to your stomach, and then it's like kind of like anchored to where they can insert and take away saline to tighten it, make it looser, okay? So it's truly meant to give you a top stomach and a bottom stomach, and this top stomach is smaller so that the food goes here first. This is why you don't drink first or during your meals, is then the food gets caught here and you're told and you feel, I'm full, okay? So so here's the band. Here's the bottom part and the top part, okay? And so my sister and I, having it done almost basically at the same time, we approached it very, very differently because people are different, right? She would make her so tight to where she couldn't eat. Here's me, I'm like, no way. Like, I would much rather have some sort
So
of
you can
regimen.
self-regulate this.
Yes, yes.
Nice.
So you go into the doctor and you're like, oh, I want to have it tighter. I want to have it looser, whatever. And I probably had mine tightened or loosened I had it for 20 years. I probably went in 3 or 4 times max. My sister is also a nurse, so she got to where she could do it herself, and she would make her so tight to where she actually couldn't eat, and to me, I think that's miserable. There's nothing about that that I wanna do, 'cause not only am I miserable, I'm making everybody miserable around me. Don't tell me I can't eat. So, for me, I did something very, very different to where I regulated my diet, like my living lifestyle, eating, whatever that was, and to lose the weight. Where she lost a lot of weight because she used it correctly. Like she had it tight and that worked for her. And so within that time, I did start to change up here to where I understood we don't live to eat, we eat to live. Very important. Where if my sister came over here for dinner today, and she is still thin. She has lost the weight and kept it off. She would still pile her plate. She cannot eat all that. She still has her band. She cannot eat it all, but she's still going to pile it on because there's something up here that says, I still need that food. And so when I look at this question about how did my relationship change with food after surgery, I really somehow, through God's grace, He gave me that thinking that you're not you're not living to eat. You're literally doing it the other way around. So sometimes I might be eating something, or I might just grab some almonds or something just because I could tell I need some calories, or a cheese stick or something. I'm literally just eating that because I'm going to work out or whatever. I'm literally doing it so that I don't pass out. Not because the way I would do it before, like, oh, I'm happy, gotta eat. Sad, gotta eat. I was very much an emotional eater, and I did not eat well. I treated my body very poorly in the stuff that I ate. And so that is how I changed really everything going forward is I understood what it was, why we eat, why we have to feed our bodies. And there was discipline behind that.
Well, I'm going to throw this comment out there. I can't remember exactly what the context was when Leah said this. He still does it with his Holy Spirit every time someone gives their life to him. But you mentioned, I don't know if it was in the video or our conversation or on the show, that oh shoot, now what was it? I'm having a brain freeze. The Holy, something about the Holy Spirit. Oh my goodness. Maybe
that he made our bodies perfect.
The temple, the body is the temple of the Spirit. Your body is the temple with the Spirit inside. The point of us is our soul, is our spirit, is what we will be in the next life. This is just a temple today, but we need to care for and maintain the temple, right? You don't want to run down. What matters is inside, but you don't want to run down ugly temple with rats and cockroaches running around.
Sounds horrible.
Yeah, it is. But you know, the way we treat our bodies and the way we go about health, the way we even grow food today, the way we're just, you know, I talk about how God created us out of the dust, and then He breathed in, and I joke and I said we became a living soil. Because we did become, you know, our body is alive. You know, we have all these microbes and everything. And you go to the desert, it's dead dust. But to grow food, you need living soil. And obviously, He breathed life and we became a living soul. But there's just one letter difference between soil and soul, and that soil has to be healthy. You know, we grow what approximates food today out of dead dust with chemical fertilizer, chemical nutrients, spray it with it that kills all life. And we call this food, and then we eat it, and no wonder we're sick, right?
Yeah, yeah, and when you think about it, you know, the public speaking that I'm doing is now in the corporate space because the hundreds of billions of dollars that are being spent on, you know, medical and absenteeism and lack of productivity because people don't feel well, and it does, like, you know, the amount of probably 65% of the working force is obese or overweight. And then those lead to like just you just have a
Well,
proclivity
we
to
have
be
these,
ill.
everybody sitting in front of a computer today. You know, how many people today work on a screen?
Right, right. Exactly.
We're
And
on a
it's
screen
just
right now, but it looks like we're not, but we are.
right. You can't see, but I'm just, you know, I'm doing some deadlifts right now.
Leg
Um,
crunches, right? Or something. Well, one more comment about the Spirit, and that is, you know, when you mentioned earlier, you know, God told me this, God told me that. Well, for anyone who's going, you know, voodoo, heebie-jeebie, what God talks to you, well, listen, Jesus said, the Holy Spirit is with you, but it will be in you. On the day of Pentecost, you know, after He ascended to the Father and the Holy Spirit was given, the Holy Spirit is with you, He said while He was with them, and it will be in you, right? So yes, that voice is an internal voice. The voice of the Spirit in those quiet moments can guide us, as He said, into all truth. It will lead you into all truth. You know, my favorite joke, how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? Only one, but the light bulb really has to want to change, right? So if you really want to be led by the Holy Spirit, you think God's going to tell you no?
can't say anything after that,
So
right?
let's see if there are any more comments. We're running out of time, but anything that you want me to pull in here and talk about? Here's one. Please ask her, Riley said, if her identity shifted in ways she didn't anticipate.
And again, oddly, no, other than I probably changed internally, meaning, and not anybody would see it, but because I was in sales, I was in media sales for 30 years, and means you've got to put yourself out there. And so I walked into a boardroom or a conference room or whatever, I'm sure I was like, uh, kind of have like, are they looking at me? Do I look fat? Do I look bloated today? Or, whatever it was. And then, when you start to believe that you do look healthy and you feel healthier and you feel better about yourself, it does help your confidence. But that is, as corny as it sounds, it really does have to come from within. It doesn't matter who says anything positive about you. 100% you take in all the negativity and what you think the negativity is, but you hear something positive and you're like, that feels great. But it's not, when it's not coming from here, when you understand why you're taking that weight off. And you said something earlier that made me think, I would love to address that, is you've got to decide to make that change yourself. All the shaming of your family, your spouse. And I can remember hearing someone say to somebody else, I won't use any names or anything, but, like looking at him and going, do you really think you need that piece of cake? And it was like, oh, like, God, how embarrassing that you're saying that in front of everybody. And that doesn't motivate anybody. And you really do need to look at yourself and go, what can I do for myself today? I'm going to be a little selfish. Get selfish, take care of yourself, because what do they tell you on the airplane? Put your mask on first before you put it on for anybody else. You've got to be healthy and taking care of yourself. And, and I don't know. I don't think I changed. I think my biggest change in my entire life is my relationship with God. I'm not embarrassed by it. Not that I was ever embarrassed by it. I think I was embarrassed by my emotion when I would take my kids to church and I would cry. And I'm like, why am I crying? This is so embarrassing. And I did my kids dirty by not taking them to church because of that. And I'm not going to live in that regret, because as one of my friends in my Bible study says, like, it's wasted energy, and it is, because all I can do is going forward. But I'm sad I didn't immerse my children in church earlier. Like,
Yeah.
shame on me. And that is probably one of the one things that I look at myself, and because today I'll go to church with them and hug them and cry with them and just everything, because I'm just so blessed to be here. I can't tell you like what this journey has done for me and my girls. I know it all came from Christ. Don't get me wrong. No false idols here, but man, did my girls, like my Bible study, they are everything to me. And I'm so thankful for them for getting
That's
me here, because I know that they had the big
that's
hand
a
in
great
it.
testimony. Let's try to run through a couple more questions quickly, because I want to honor Angela here. Welcome back. I haven't noticed you here in a while, but welcome. Actually, wouldn't mind knowing a habit you thought would be small, but turned out to be surprisingly hard to keep.
I probably, when you go on fad diets, at first, tell me who doesn't want to have bacon and eggs every morning and all the bacon you can eat, right? All of a sudden, that's not so good on like day 4. You're like, ugh, I don't want that anymore. So I can tell you, there were so many times when I would do like the whole idea of Atkins, but again, it's not sustainable. At first, you're like, eggs and anything that doesn't have sugar. But then all of a sudden, 3 days in, you're like, oh, I cannot eat another piece of turkey or bacon or another egg or even another piece of cheese.
Well,
And that,
and most of these diets, they're really popular for a while, and then you start to hear about all the negative side effects of what they actually caused.
mhm,
Balance, moderation, basic principles, right? I mean, and
yeah. Yeah, and think about our parents, like, they were eating everything, but there weren't all the preservatives in it back then. Like they were closer to a God diet than we'll ever be because everything's got preservatives. And that's probably why I don't have any problems making sweets for my family because I know I'm making it in here. It's not like, a shelf stable ding dong or
One of the
ding dong.
principles. So I come from this apocalyptic group that was many would consider a cult. I don't personally, but it was good for me, whatever. Anyway, the point is we used to believe that Christ was going to return very soon. And so the return of Jesus was a thing. And we used to say, one of the principles we had was, and I love this principle, I love it. That, if you remember one thing from me on food, this is it. Eat foods that will spoil, but eat them before they do. Because you were talking about preservatives, right?
Yes.
If that's and we used to joke, if the label says, best used by, please use this before the return of Jesus, that's too far.
Yes. Yes.
Whenever
Yes.
that is, and I don't want to, I'm making a joke out of it. I don't mean to make a joke out of it. But the point is, basic healthy principles, right? Instead of fad
Yes.
diets, what is healthy versus what is designed to lose weight?
Right. And I think you really have to look at them not so scientifically. I think you have to look at them through logic. I think you have to look at them through making a decision to eat better.
Yeah.
And I mean, even like I make dog treats. Like in just 2 days ago, I had to empty out the dog treats because they had mold on them
Mhm.
and because there's no preservatives.
Right.
But it hurts my heart to think, I have so many friends that are losing pets and I'm like, what is going on? Like we're new dog owners. We rescued the most precious dog, I think, in the world. And all I can think of is how can I keep him around longer? Because I don't want him to die. So it even extends to our pets. We have a rescue cat and dog, and I want to keep them around as long as I can. But when I hear like people losing their pets left and right, I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. Like, what can I do?
Let's
You know,
make this the last comment. Two comments here. First one, do you still lean on a Bible study group? I know I do. And that was answered by, thank you for Kids and Counting. That was answered by Melissa, who said, I'm a proud member of that group. We are all watching right now and we just adore Susan. We lean on each other.
she's
So
being
tell
so
us
kind.
tell us a little bit about your personal Bible study group here as we wrap this up for tonight.
Okay, so just again, she's being so kind when she's like, we all lean on each other. We do to a certain extent, but I can tell you they are so patient with me. The questions that probably come out of left field, they're like, what in the world? Because again, they're all, a few years ago, I made the decision I was going to be around more godly people. And one of the people within our group, she is a natural, we call her the great bringer togetherer, and we're all friends because of her. And so she has this orbit of friends and who are now we're all so dear to each other. And it's small. Like there's 8 of us. And these are these are my chosen sisters. They are my chosen sisters. They are my sisters in Christ and they are so incredibly intelligent biblically where I am so not knowledgeable. And again, I know that that's not going to get me into heaven on
Yeah,
earth.
I mean,
Um,
Jesus, that's maybe more the self-deprecating part again, and I mean that in a very positive way. But Jesus said, unless you become, he said he brought a little child, and he was teaching. It's a teachable moment for his disciples and all the people who were so excited to be with this important religious figure, Jesus, right? And he brought a little child and said, unless you become like this little child, you will not see the kingdom of God.
ooh, yeah,
So
I
having a childlike spirit of knowing that you don't know everything, I mean, that's key. I've studied the Bible my whole life, but what do I know? I want to just share one more little comment here uh, from G. Bongarts. Susan gives peace when you talk to her. I really love her. She has always been a sweet person, and I didn't even know she was so into the Bible. So,
well,
and
that's
I'm
probably
going to say, another thing is we're to be the light of the world. Jesus did not say that we were to be the loudspeaker of the world. Right? So yeah,
Yeah,
I
but we
love geeking out on the scriptures and what they mean and all that. But I used to be a preacher, and I really try not to preach.
But I think, we do seek that. I think, that's why I'm in this group. That's why God put me in this group was I'm on this journey a few years ago. And if I had gotten into this group, say with a bunch of people like myself, can you imagine? We're like the blind leading the blind. We have no idea what we're talking about. And I'm just blessed that I am the 1/8 that is really brand new for thinking time is infinite, right? I am so new to this, and here's where I think that I may help the group if that's if like it's a give and take, right? In that before I hopped on here, or no, gosh, I have the worst brain right now. But Melissa said, you've made me excited about the Bible again. Oh, and and maybe that's what I bring, because I don't bring knowledge right now because I'm just sucking them all dry because I don't understand, and we'll end up like in our
No,
Bible
so
study stuck on one thing because I'm like,
yeah,
wait,
so
wait, wait.
in terms of teaching the faith, right? And for all my Baha'i friends out there, this term teaching the faith, in terms of teaching the faith, let's spend a moment on that. Jesus said, I will give you rivers of living water, right? And then he said, be ready always, or this was maybe Peter, be ready always to give an answer to every man who asks about the reason for the hope that lies within you. So if you attract somebody's heart because of being full of love, right? The disciples are known by love. So if you're attracting people because of the love, they're going to ask you a question. That's when you get to answer. You don't get to go tell them what you know if they're not asking, right? Think about it.
Right.
That's so obvious, but a lot of religious people don't seem to get that, right? They want to
No, and
witness. They want to
yeah.
witness. Can I get a witness?
Well,
No, somebody's got to ask you first. And when they ask, that turns the spigot on of the living water because now you've done your job, which you were a light. And some beautiful butterfly or some crusty moth is attracted by that light. And they ask you, what's going on here? Why? I see this light, whether it's blue or red or white, I see this light. And I didn't mean that politically, blue and red, but whatever. I see this light. and why? How? What? What are the 5 questions in journalism class? They ask a question. Now God's going to flow something through you because you did it his way. And so, yeah, your friends are excited by having you there because suddenly God's giving them insight because they've attracted somebody that's asking them questions.
yes, and they are amazingly patient, but wonderful, and just a spigot of information. And especially like just the questions, like, just the amount of information that I'm given, it's all new to me. And I'm like, I don't understand this. And, while on my walks, I'm literally calling my dad ugly crying, walking around the neighborhood, going, am I being prideful for feeling this way? Or what, like it's just it affects every single part of my life. And just yesterday, I'm asking my husband, Craig, did you know that heaven's coming back down to earth? Like this is all going to be renewed. Of course it is. He already made this beautiful world for us. It just got ruined. So everybody that dies before Christ comes back. And so let me tell you something. That was a truth bomb, and I didn't see it coming. And it was in the last two chapters of the book that we were just finishing up, and I was like, I could have used that at the beginning of the book so I could know this. Like that was a truth bomb. And, again, they all knew, but they all had questions, which I thought was so cool because even though they knew heaven's coming back here, they each had kind of questions that seemed humorous. We all kind of laughed about it, but we were like, will there be meat? What if I am not buried in the ground? Am I going to be dust particles? Like,
Well, now
so
I'm
I
reminded of
do believe it is a catalyst for good conversation, that I'm so new and malleable. So I am so incredibly thankful for them and the amount of people around me when all of a sudden you start talking about Christ and they're like, "Oh yeah, and did you know?" Like, you don't realize how many people are that godly until you start having those conversations. Just cool.
I'm reminded now of one of my favorite songs by the Crash Test Dummies, "God Shuffled His Feet." I don't know if anybody remembers that. They were kind of a one-hit wonder, but they had a number of great albums. But anyway, um, the lyrics are, "After 7 days, he was quite tired, so God said, 'Let there be a day for picnics with wine and bread.' He gathered up the people he had made and sat back in the shade. And then what with God there, the people asked him questions like, 'Do you get to eat in heaven, or do you have to have your hair cut? And if your eye gets poked out in this life, will it be waiting up in heaven with your wife?'" And and God
Yeah, our pet's gonna be up there.
and God shuffled his feet and glanced around at them. The people stared right back at him. And then he told them this story and they didn't understand it and it was
There's
awkward and God shuffled his feet, right? And the point is, God wants to have a relationship with us, and the people want answers to all their questions, which is great. But I don't know, some things are a mystery, and we won't really understand. I mean, how much meaningful, deep conversation can you have with your 2-year-old?
Yeah, and I guess you should be having those conversations with them very early on, just like I never talked baby to my children. I would use, words that they may not know, but they will learn it because those are the words we use, your
But
everyday vernacular, you
and
know?
you want to answer their questions, but they'll also often really ask questions that, "Hey, well, I'll tell you more about that in 10 years."
Yes.
You know what I
Yes,
mean?
certain things that we do hold off on.
And so, anyway, one more thing I want to end as I again crash land this plane because we're over time and I could just keep going talking to you. It's just really been wonderful to have you here. It's just really a joy. Um, and that is that in the book of Revelation, it says, "They that loved the Lord spoke often one to another. And God said, I will remember them in the day that I make up my jewels." And jewels are, of course, formed under pressure and heat. And each one is unique. And whatever little flaws are in the environment, this certain mineral creeps in that doesn't belong there, it gives the jewel some unique characteristic, right? But they're all formed under pressure and heat with different ingredients. They're all unique. But God is crafting us, and he says he'll remember us in the day that he makes up his jewels because we spoke often one to another about things like this. That Bible study group that you're talking about, those friends that you're talking about. This is what God wants, is for his children to be, basking in his love, learning about his creation, about our purpose. And, like those children, like those 2-year-olds, like those 4-year-olds that aren't worried about, whether they're overweight or not yet. All that stuff comes later and we have to learn adult lessons. These are just some thoughts that are going through my mind, Susan, as we wrap up this. Those are my thoughts, but you have the last word. What do you want to share with the audience as we wrap this up?
I guess, I've always considered myself a late bloomer in all parts of Susan, and even my dad was a late bloomer in his Christianity, and I'll tell you, I know the day it flipped for him. And so when I say where I probably got galvanized in this is when I understood what it meant to be an unexpected. I wasn't on Satan's bingo card, let's say. And we were at one of our Bible studies and one of our girls, KK, said, "I'm gonna pray for you." And I'm like, Who is she talking to?" And I tell this story all the time because it truly galvanized what it meant later on. But at the time, I was like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "Life's gonna get hard." I'm like, "Life's gonna get hard. Like, I'm a believer now. What are you talking about? Life can't get hard." I believe in God. I'm in my journey with Christ. And it did. It was a horrible 1.5 years. And it was because Satan was coming at me. He was coming hard for me because I was in it. I was in it to win it. And I wasn't going to let it go. But I'll tell you, I was in a horrible space with a lot of different situations. And I stayed the course. And here I am today on the other side of it, being thankful for things that usually you shouldn't be thankful for, but you know it's going to come out later why you're going through it. And here I am today, staying the course and saying, I am stronger because I'm standing with God. I've got Jesus in my heart.
That's that extreme heat and pressure we were just talking about in the day that God makes up his jewels, and that this conversation, talking often one with another about these things, helps us get through that. Well, Susan, it's been a total joy. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here tonight. Would love to have you back sometime. We've got one more thing to do, and that's to play the sneak peek for next week's show. Hopefully everyone will stick around for a couple minutes to see what's coming up next week. Meanwhile, I'll sign off by saying this is created in the image of God. Each one of you is created in the image of God, and God loves his creation. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Wade.
Hey everyone, it's Wade Franson, host of Created in the Image of God. I'm here with another sneak peek. This is episode 181, airing on September 30th, Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Central. I'm here with Dean Simone, who is a self-proclaimed Christian non-dualist, or we might say tongue-in-cheek, a Catholic Taoist. And he's got an amazing perspective on the Bible. The title of the show is Myth or Metaphor? Does the Bible provide access to truth, or is it a barrier to understanding reality? Welcome to the studio, Dean.
Glad to be here.
Well, Dean, you know, you came to my attention because you've been in film. You've been a major star in some pretty big commercials. You've also got a band that tours, you know, you're kind of a Renaissance man. And yet in talking to you, there's this solid core, centered core, despite Hollywood, despite music industry, that focuses on our purpose in life and spirituality. How do you balance, you know, all that riotous living, I say jokingly, and your spiritual nature?
Well, no riotous living in this household, that's for sure. I feel like it's always about know thyself. As Jesus said, physician, heal thyself. So I've always found that being centered, being in touch with how I feel about things has always helped me navigate through a lot of strange ways that are out here in Hollywood. But there's also a lot of really good people out here, and there's also a lot more light than I think people really realize. So there's the kingdom of heaven is within. That's Christian non-duality. The kingdom of heaven in here.
Well, we've also, you know, begun to unpack that, peel the layers off the onion around getting to that reality, what it really means to be Christ-like, what it really means to be sovereign as a human being while submitting to the light and avoiding darkness. So give us a hint of what people will learn and hear when they tune into the show on September 30th.
Well, I think that when it's said that we're made in God's image, that I believe that that's not really talking about that we walk on two legs and we have faces and eyes, but I'm talking about the sovereignty of God and that indomitable spirit, and God being something that is not a being, but God is being. So that what it is that we're searching for is something beyond the metaphor. Nothing's wrong with the metaphor. The metaphor is a means for us to get to the truth. The truth is what it's all about. That's the whole ball of wax right there. So if we can remain open to whatever the metaphor is without getting hung up on the metaphor, then I think that we can know ourselves, not the Dean or the Wade self, but the one that's deeper, the one that is the larger self that connects us all. I think that's where the truth comes. And I feel like when we're speaking with each other, we're going to have some opportunity to delve into that and get a closer look.
Wonderful. Well, there's nothing I can add to that. That was said so well and so succinctly. All I can tell you is to be there at 8 p.m. Central on September 30th.